Okay, so welcome everyone to the Western Vegan Society's annual speaker panel. So this year we have a really exciting lineup, and I just wanted to thank everyone for being here, both participants and guest speakers. So this year we have 3 speakers, and we're kind of just going to go through one by one. I'm going to do a little introduction before each speaker presents, and then we just ask if everyone can save their questions for the very end, just kind of to make sure we're good on timing and things like that. So if you do have a question, maybe just jot it down and then we can save those for the end. And then additionally, if you're interested in winning a gift card, I'll provide a Google form link in the Zoom chat towards the end. And you can fill that out to be entered to win one of 3 gift cards to some cool vegan businesses. So without further ado, our first speaker is James McInnes. So James McInnes is a co-founder, CEO, and board member. James is an accomplished entrepreneur and scientist. James was involved in the development of the product line, implementation of technology systems, and foundation of the Odd Burger brand. James has been vegan for more than 8 years. So go ahead, James.
Great, thanks a lot. So I will just share my screen. Is that okay? Okay. It's disabled.
Okay, go ahead. Should work. It was just because I was also sharing.
Oh, okay, cool. Still says it's disabled. Like you have to allow me to do it or whatever.
Okay. That should work now.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. All right. Well, thanks a lot. Can you guys see my presentation here?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, welcome to Odd Burger. So Odd Burger is a plant-based technology company disrupting fast food. So today I'm going to just present our investor presentation. So just so everyone knows, we are a publicly traded company. We IPO'd last year in April, so it's been almost a year now, on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Our ticker symbol there is ODD, and we are also on the US exchange on the OTC under ODDAF, and in Europe and Frankfurt Exchange and IA9. All right, so did you know that you can create a better world by eating fast food? Now, doesn't that seem odd? Because I think the interesting thing about the fast food industry is that people know that it's obviously detrimental to the environment, horrible for our health, and of course, like the worst for animals. So when we first started Odd Burger, and actually Odd Burger was started here in London, Ontario in 2016 under a different name, but I'm also a Western grad. So this is very much like a London-based business, and in fact we manufacture all our food here in London, Ontario as well. So, but really the whole point of Odd Burger is to try to obviously create change in the world by disrupting fast food, and fast food is, the largest sector of the food business. So it certainly has a huge effect on the world. So this is Chickpea, and Chickpea believes that we can make change together, and obviously that change is going to come through saving the planet, helping our community, celebrating differences, and having some fun doing it. So obviously we agree with Chickpea, so we're on a mission to help out. So Odd Burger, what does it look like? What does our business look like? Well, we operate a vegan fast food chain. So we are the world's first publicly traded vegan fast food chain. And we also operate a food manufacturing company. And both of these companies that we work together to create change. So here are the brands that we have. So Odd Burger, which is our fast food chain. And then Preposterous Foods, this is our food line. So 65% of the food that's sold at Odd Burger comes from Preposterous Foods. Preposterous Foods manufactures 13 different plant-based proteins and 8 plant-based sauces. And these are distributed through Cisco. So I'll talk a little bit more about Odd Burger and the menu and that kind of stuff. So our menu, if you haven't already tried our restaurant, it's the idea is we make iconic fast food vegan, so you can enjoy it without the guilt. So a big thing about fast food is that there was traditionally a lot of guilt about eating fast food, because obviously guilt that you're killing animals, guilt about the horrible effects of the environment, and obviously your health. So the idea here is that wouldn't it be amazing if we can all eat and celebrate fast food again? Because it's something that even before I was vegan, I didn't eat fast food for a long time just because I just knew it was like bad for me and not good for the world. But our menu is very much full fast food menus. We have breakfast, ice cream, milkshakes, burgers, wraps, and all of our prices are comparable, like within $1 of other fast food chains. And so what is kind of so cool about how we do this? So we use something called smart kitchens, and smart kitchens are highly automated like kitchens. And the idea is that they fit in less than 1,000 square feet. We have like pre-programmed cooking equipment. There's like self-checkout, so cashless systems and self-checkout. We have like a lot of proprietary automation technology that helps us run the kitchens. And it's really focused on takeout and delivery, so minimal seating. And again, some of the automation technology that we're developing are like robots and different automation solutions that are going to make preparing food a lot easier and quicker. And the idea here is that you can have like a customized burger and get it the same anywhere. So imagine, if you go to Subway, for example, you're trying to explain to the sandwich maker how to make your sandwich, and like, oh, like a little bit more pickles, a little bit less onion, like it's kind of that type of experience. The idea where our burger is going is that you'll be able to pre-program your burger toppings. So let's say you want 5 mils of sauce and some extra mayo and 6 grams of onions. So the idea is you can get this literally identical burger anywhere across any chain. So it's a very revolutionary idea that we're currently working on. And right now we're in the prototype phase of that. We're working with a London robotics company in creating this. So some very cool stuff coming out. And obviously, what are people saying about Odd Burger? Well, people love the food. So for example, in our Toronto location, we have over 7,000 ratings in DoorDash at 4.7 stars. Our average Google rating on our restaurants is 4.8. So lots of good things that people are saying about it. So, but obviously we're not just, here to like make food. We're here to actually create change. So we really call ourselves this odd community, and it's individuals connected by purpose. And really that is kind of what the vegan community is. So a lot of what we do is also we give back financially to the vegan community. So we work closely with the Save movement, with Anita out of Toronto. And for example, every grand opening, we donate half the sales to the Save movement. We work with also social justice organizations like Black Lives Matter. We work directly with farm sanctuaries. Dara Farm Sanctuary is one, for example. Charlotte's Freedom Farm is another one. And so, really the point here is we want to, unite a community around food and around our ethics and celebrate that. And it's such a powerful thing to do. I won't talk a ton about preposterous foods because it's not really super relevant, but basically here are all the things that we make. We're a food technology company, and something that makes our food different is that we use primarily simple and natural ingredients. So we're talking about like chickpeas, wheat, oats, and beans. A lot of our menu items only have like 5 or 6 ingredients in it. So the idea that we're creating food that has some health benefits, we're not saying it's like necessarily lower calorie or lower sodium, but the idea that it is created with natural food and food that's not as processed. And we find that is a really successful strategy, especially people that aren't vegan that come to a restaurant, because they are seeking things that are more natural, generally speaking. And our distribution partner is Cisco. Cisco is the largest distribution partner in the world. This partnership provides us with over 600,000 potential global food service customers. So it's a very significant partnership for us. And again, we have a manufacturing center in London, Ontario. We're HACCP certified, CFA registered. We're 100% nut-free as well, and we do some gluten-free and soy-free products as well. So, and again, our products have been developed over the past 7 years, and they've been proven with like thousands and thousands of customers. So I'll just kind of put it all together. Again, if we look at our revenue streams, we have our preposterous food revenue, we have our Odd Burger corporate revenue, and we're also franchising our restaurants. So franchising is just a way that allows us to grow a lot quicker. So some of our competitive advantage, we're 100% vegan. I talked about our food. Also, our food in our restaurants is made to order, so it's on-demand cooking. So the idea is that you're getting something that's cooked for you, and it's not something that's like, sitting in a hot holding cabinet like you get at other fast food chains. It's made to order. And another cool thing, our restaurants can run with as little as one person. So that's pretty neat too. Depending how busy they are. But again, we were able to do that through all of our technology. So if you look at our growth strategy right now we have 6 locations operational, 5 of those are corporate and 1 are franchised. We are building right now 7 more locations in Ontario. Those are a combination of corporate and franchise locations. And we have 3 franchises as well that we have sold. 1 is in BC, 1 is in Calgary, Alberta. And we're also planning a US expansion as well. So lots of big growth ahead. And really what we're finding is that our model is really connecting with both vegans and non-vegans and creating a tremendous amount of change in the industry. So just a couple of notes about the market in general. The plant-based food market is expected to grow to 74.2 billion. So that's 11.9% growth year on year. And the fast food market is expected to grow to 931 billion. And this is by 2027. So what we're kind of in the combination of both those markets, the fast food market and the plant-based market. Those are both growing markets and both just huge markets as well. I won't talk about these things. A little bit about our historical performance. So we're just kind of in the start of our big growth phase now. So we had a record quarterly revenue last revenue. We had a 79% increase in revenue compared to the previous quarter, and 166% increase compared to the last year. So a lot of growth is happening on our side. And again, we're a publicly traded company, so this is a bit of a board. I won't go too much into this, but the company was founded by myself and my wife, Vasiliki. And we're both vegan. We founded the company in 2014, and we worked together to build the brand and the business and that kind of stuff. So we're really obviously proud vegans and proud to make change through our business. A little bit about our public company. So about 52% of the shares are owned by myself and my wife. Our market capitalization, which is the value of the company, is currently 33 million. We did go up to something like 150 million last year when the markets were crazy. But we are being the first publicly traded vegan fast food chain. It's always kind of cool to see that you can invest in our company on the public market, and we find that like a lot of vegans invest in it because they want to invest in something that they believe in. And if you love the food and you love the brand, then we find that it's a great combination. And that's pretty much it. I guess the bottom line is that by choosing plant-based fast food, you're making a better choice for your body, the planet, and the animals. And we're really excited to be leading this mission, and having all the support from the community to help make this change. And that's it for me.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation, James. Again, for questions, we're just going to keep them to the end. So if you do have a question from this presentation, maybe just jot it down, and then we can save those all for the end. Okay, so our next speaker is Dr. Kimberly Wintemute. Kimberly Wintemute is a family doctor and assistant professor at the University of Toronto. She has held some leadership roles, including primary care lead of Choosing Wisely Canada from 2015 to 2021, and medical director of North York Family Health Team from 2008 to 2016. These days, in addition to her practice, she works with the Ontario College of Family Physicians, with the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario, and occasionally with the judicial system as expert witness in medical legal cases. She is a fellow of the Centre for Sustainable Health Systems at the University of Toronto and leads the Inhaler Working Group of the Community of Practice that links the University of Toronto teaching hospitals in their effort toward providing high-quality, low-carbon care. So without further ado, Dr. Wintemute, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Gabriella. I feel like my talk's going to be a little more sedate, not quite as exciting as Odd Burger. And I don't have slides. I'm just going to talk about promoting veganism, the opportunities and barriers that exist in family medicine. So I'll start with opportunities. Probably the most common opportunity to promote veganism as a family doctor occurs when a parent brings in usually a teen or a preteen who has decided to go vegan. at home, and it's a problem, and they're trying, they're bringing the teenager to the doctor so that the doctor can say that's not a good decision, you need to eat meat, etc. So it turns out this is an incredible kind of teachable moment for families. So in those moments, typically, what happens is I'll kind of listen to the concerns of the parent. And then I listen to, the concerns of the teenager or the preteen who, and the reasons that they are, wanting to be vegan or vegetarian. And of course, what ends up happening is that, there's a bit of a kinship that develops between myself and the teen. And we have a discussion about how vegan diets are scientifically based and have a number of health benefits as well as environmental benefits. And that the teenager, really is bringing wisdom to the family. So it's a great opportunity because most teenagers and maybe even young adults just love to feel smarter than their parents. And so it's there's kind of there's a bit of a whole scale shift in what goes on in the examination room, compared to what the parent kind of thought was going to happen, right? So we talk about nutrition, and we talk about the various, kind of elements of diet, and protein and fiber, and iron and B12 and essential fatty acids, and things like this. And kids and teens who decide to go vegan, they usually already know about these things. Not always, but oftentimes they have a good basis of knowledge. They're often inspired by teachers and people at school, so it's quite nice. So what we end up doing is kind of promoting learning at the family basis, at the family level. I encourage the family to kind of work together on meal preparation and meal planning, so that the teenager isn't kind of a problem to cook for, but is rather, the whole family is kind of, kind of learning to eat vegan some of the time. So that's probably the main opportunity. I would say the most common opportunity, and I would say that it's also happening more frequently, which is really inspiring. Another opportunity is actually kids who are quote unquote picky eaters. So I do a lot of pediatrics in my practice, and kids who are picky eaters, they oftentimes just happen to also be vegetarian by default, right? So there's a shocking number of kids out there who really have, kind of less than 10 foods in their repertoire, right? So you'd be surprised how well they can grow on macaroni and bananas, for example. Those really picky eaters with very limited repertoires, they tend not to include meat. So very often it'll be like mac and cheese, and maybe a fruit, and maybe cucumbers, right? So that also kind of lends itself to an opportunity to talk about vegetarian diets and how vegetarian diets can be whole and can be complete, helping parents kind of understand how they can incorporate different vegan options. I don't know very many toddlers who don't like to kind of dip little pieces of bread in things, or little pieces of pita, things like that. That's quite common. And now, even for the family who typically relies on a lot of kind of processed food or kind of convenience food, there's, you can now find a lot of kind of ready-made vegan food, like even just simple like hummus and pita, for example, or, little energy bites and things like that, which are, often kind of whole food made. So you can kind of help to steer families in that direction. Another opportunity would be pregnancy. So I've provided pregnancy care for most of my career. And so a couple things happen. I mean, oftentimes in the first trimester of pregnancy, people have kind of smell and taste aversions. And oftentimes, they crave in particular kind of simple carbohydrates and fruits and things that are kind of very simple on the palate. And they often don't want to eat kind of animal products. So it's a nice opportunity to kind of introduce just kind of the concepts that they can still have, complete nutrition, without having kind of meat and dairy. And pregnancy is a little bit of a kind of a critical period for learning. So, even a very kind of convenience food kind of oriented person, who really didn't pay much attention, say, to their health, they become pregnant and all of a sudden they're really interested in nutrition and, exercise and making sure that they do the best thing, because now it's not just about them. So it's a nice opportunity to talk about veganism. And, vegan moms are often kind of pressured by family members to eat meat when they're pregnant, and they're often pressured to give meat to their babies when their babies start to eat. So during pregnancy is a good time to kind of start talking about kind of infant and child nutrition, and the fact that they don't necessarily need to give meat to their baby, and that they can raise their child vegan in a very healthy way. And so I usually start to have those discussions when people are pregnant, so that they're not kind of caught off guard when their baby's 6 months old and they're starting to feed their baby, and their extended family or their partner or what have you is kind of putting on the heat around introducing meat, for example. So that's pregnancy. Another kind of opportunity might be after, kind of a major health event. So sometimes, older people, after a heart attack or stroke, or perhaps a new diagnosis of diabetes. So I would say, not for most people, but for a small percentage of those people, those events really hit them, and they really are open to making kind of health behavior change that they had never considered before. So it's also a good opportunity. And in terms of diabetes, the Diabetes Canada, which provide the guidelines for the treatment management of diabetes in Canada, they recommend 2 diets for management of diabetes. So one is a whole food plant-based diet, and the other is the so-called Mediterranean diet. So when people have a new diagnosis of something like diabetes, it's a good opportunity for us to talk about those kinds of things. And I have a registered dietitian that I tend to refer my patients to. She is plant-based herself, and she has a really lovely way of working with people, kind of toward plant-based diet. So even for people who aren't kind of totally ready to make a complete change, she really is good at helping people in that direction. So she does a lot of kind of online virtual care. So that's super helpful. I've kind of developed some tools in my practice over the years. So I have a little library above my desk in my practice. So with all kinds of kind of books around nutrition and other aspects of kind of human health and kind of psychology and mental health and wellness, and kind of meditation. I have a copy of kind of the China study for people who want to have a really dense read and are kind of scientifically inclined. I have kind of Michael Greger's books. And I have some cookbooks, so I happen to be given as a gift a couple of copies of a very good vegan cookbook. So I keep one of them above my desk and I lend it out to people. So that's kind of helpful. And even the Canada's Food Guide now, which when I was young, we learned about the Canada's Food Guide. It was the Canada's Food Guide was put together with quite a lot of industry funding, and it's now based on science, thanks to Jane Philpott, who was also she's a family doctor just north of Toronto, and she was Prime Minister Trudeau's first health minister in 2015. And she committed to revising the Canada's Food Guide as Minister of Health, and to making it scientifically based, and to removing industry funding, and she did that. So I now have kind of the posters for the Canada's Food Guide, and I often refer to them when I'm talking to people. And what used to be called meat and alternatives when I was young is now called protein, and there's no more dairy, kind of milk, category. It's just dairy is kind of lumped in under proteins, and so it's super easy to look at and to understand. It's kind of the picture of the plate model, so I use that very often. So I'll just talk a little bit about maybe barriers at the family medicine level, barriers to promoting veganism. And so I think, probably the main barrier in Canada is kind of, what I'll call kind of the business model of family medicine. So most family doctors in Canada, are essentially small business owners, and they have to run their practice like a business. So they get paid from their provincial or territorial Ministry of Health, and then out of their pay, they pay their staff, and they pay their rent, and they buy their equipment and supplies and everything. So because of that, and also because we function in a payment model where the government has kind of decided kind of how much we're worth, and I'm not complaining about that, because we're very fortunate. But it does mean that I can't spend like an hour and a half with someone talking about the benefits of veganism, or kind of the small nuances of what they might want to focus on. And so and I think this is where kind of naturopaths, for example, have a really have a bit of an advantage there, because they are kind of charging their clients directly, so they can just kind of bill by the hour and the client pays. And in the publicly funded system, we just don't have that kind of setup. So that's it's a barrier, because sometimes people really do want to talk about the particularities of their diet, and our model's just not kind of set up to really kind of support that. I would say, and I don't want to sound kind of overly jaded, but we have essentially not so much a healthcare system as we have kind of a sickness system, right? So we have this system that's kind of reactive rather than kind of proactive. Although we try to do as much health promotion at the family medicine level as possible, it's hard to perhaps engage in health promotion kind of across the board. So if everyone who came in for kind of preventive healthcare, if I spoke to everyone, kind of about veganism, I wouldn't make much difference for most of those people, because there's this phenomenon among human beings that, we're kind of open to messaging, we're open to health behavior change, for example, at certain times, so it's about readiness. Like all change is about readiness. And so, there's this kind of cycle of change, where you have kind of pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and then you have relapse, and then you have pre-contemplation again, and it kind of goes around in a circle. It's kind of the model of change that we kind of understand in healthcare. And so I would say when people are in the contemplative or preparation or even action phase, it's really you can really, as a healthcare provider, help to kind of advance them, in terms of their commitment to veganism. You can help them really advance or maintain their commitment, and that's super satisfying. But for people who are, maybe pre-contemplative, or, we usually don't make much difference. But overall, family medicine is a very kind of gratifying career choice, and also kind of place to promote veganism. So I'm all done.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wintemute. I definitely relate to the story of kind of the parent making well, I wasn't really a teenager, but I wish I had you as my doctor because my experience wasn't so positive, but I'm still here. So perseverance is important. Okay, thank you very much. So next we have our last speaker of the day. So Dr. Tushar Mehta completed medical school and residency at the University of Toronto. Currently, he practices emergency medicine and participates in international health projects. Formerly an annual volunteer in rural India, he is now doing work in Haiti. He has also worked with the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society and is a medical advisor for Project Canoe in Toronto. Along with a small team, Dr. Mehta co-founded Plant-Based Data, an online database which collects and organizes academic literature regarding the impact of a plant-based diet on health, environment, and food security, including the role of animal agriculture in creating pandemics. Dr. Mehta, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the intro. Great presentations. I wish I had Kimberly as my family doctor too when I was a kid. Let me see if I can screen share. And I'm trying to do it, but I'm not sure what's happening at the moment. It doesn't seem like it's working. Let's see, portion of the screen. It's telling me to open system preferences to share a portion of the screen. Why is that? Sorry, guys, this usually works pretty smoothly on Zoom. I've never had that desktop one.
Does anybody know why I'm not able to share my screen? Sometimes if you have multiple monitors, it makes you select which monitor or kind of which program you want to share.
Oh, I see.
If that helps
Yeah,
out.
before I was hooked up to 2 monitors. And I don't know if that's now a problem.
If it's telling you to go to system preferences, you may have to go to system preferences and accessibility, I think.
Accessibility. Okay,
And
thank you very much.
Maybe display. No, that's not right.
Accessibility. There's a Zoom thing here.
There's something else.
Let's see. Display.
No, it's not that.
I'm so sorry, guys. I'm taking everybody's time, and I've never had this problem before. I usually hit share screen and it works. And maybe because I was previously connected to 2 monitors, and now there's something changed now, even that I disconnected.
Okay, it's actually security and privacy.
Security and privacy. Okay, security and privacy.
And then you click the lock to make changes.
Oh, here, Zoom. Okay,
And
click
I
this lock.
think
Got it. Okay.
maybe it would either be in where it says screen recording or something that allows you to share your screen.
Okay. Okay.
And then you check off.
I have to quit and reopen. So I'm just going to quit Zoom and reopen, guys. Sorry about that. Okay, let me do it
No
right now.
worries. Thanks, Vanessa.
No problem. This is from having proctor track for my exams.
I'm so sorry. Now let me try that again. Looks like it might be working. Okay, let me put desktop 1. What's happening here? Okay, can you see my desktop, guys?
Yes.
Okay, you'll probably see that I have many things that are open.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let me just minimize that. Is it okay if I just do it in this mode? Maybe I'll just go slideshow, play from start. Okay, is that visible to everybody?
Yes, looks good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so sorry about that. Okay, so my name is Dr. Tushar Mehta. Yes, I work for a number of different organizations, including doing some work in Haiti, and I co-founded this website called Plant-Based Data, which I hope you'll all check into. And Kimberly, there's a section there called Resources, which you could share with your patients, that has nutrition and some good recipe things on there as well. Some of the best things that we could find. Now, I'm going to be very brief. This is normally a longer presentation, but I want people to come across with some of the important things about animal agriculture versus plant agriculture and plant foods, and the relative impact on the environment and the importance of proper plant-based agriculture for a better environment. Starting with people, here are some of my friends in Haiti that I've worked with, and we'll talk about world population, where we have a world of more than 7 billion people. And if you're growing at 1%, which is what's happening right now, we grow at about 1% globally. Some places, maybe slow or shrinking, other places growing fast, but altogether it's about 1%. You get an extra billion people every 10 to 12 years. Now, currently, we have about 7.8 billion people on the earth. And by 2050, we're going to have 10 billion people. A lot more potentially by the end of this century. And there's a lot of variation that may happen as well. Now, if you take humans all together, if you look at, let's say, humans 10,000 years ago or something like that, humans were a very, very, very small percentage of the biomass of all animals that roamed on the earth, all mammals, let's say, or vertebrates, animals that roamed on the earth. We were one species amongst thousands. And if you put us all on a scale, we'd be far less than 1% of the total weight. Currently, the human population itself weighs about 1/3 of the total mass of all vertebrates that walk on the land, and our livestock about 2/3. Now, there's some different stats there. There's a little bit of variation from different data sets from a professor called Vaclav Smil and other more recent research. But it's safe to say that wild animal vertebrates are probably between 1% to 4% of the biomass on Earth currently. Okay, and that's insane if you think about that. Most people don't know this or think about this, but that's a crazy statistic. Just chickens alone, just chickens, weigh more. If you put them all on a scale, they weigh 3 times more than all wild bird species combined, okay, according to current research. There's 15 to 20,000 species of wild birds. So you got to appreciate the scale at which animal agriculture and humans are taking over the earth. From 1970 to about 2017, wild animal populations, if you look at the average population of wild animals that are tracked, has plummeted by more than 68% on average. And the human population has doubled, okay? We've changed 75% of the land-based environment on the earth, 2/3 of the marine environment, and 3/4 of all freshwater systems are dedicated to crop and livestock production. The world's biomass, mainly deforestation, has been cut in half by humans, maybe more, it depends on where you start measuring from. And we control 1/4 of everything that grows on Earth by sunlight, okay? And we occupy just agriculture alone occupies about 40 to 50% of the non-frozen surface of the Earth. So what I call this is ecological genocide, all right? We are killing all life on Earth through our combined activities and our growth in everything. And as you can see a little bit already, agriculture plays a big part of this. Most people don't see it. Like wherever we're living, life may be good, things seem okay, we can go to some national park or go camping. We stay within our own bubbles, and we don't really see what's going on, on a wider scale outside of our bubbles. And this is a big problem. Now, why do animals fit into this equation? Why are we talking about animals when we talk about the environment? So start with feed conversion ratios. If you want to have 1 kilogram of meat for people to eat, or plant protein for people to eat, you have to feed that animal 3 to 6 kilograms of protein to get 1 kilogram of protein back. You're going to feed them plant protein mostly, and then you get 1 kilogram back of chicken flesh, let's say. Now, these are factory farming conditions, the most optimized and intensive non-organic factory farming conditions that we're talking about here. In order to get this kind of efficiency, When it comes to humans, if you have a baby or a child, they don't grow this quick or this efficient. But we've made these animals more efficient than natural animals. These are all domesticated animals. They're not natural animals. You can see the chickens are the most efficient. And then there's pigs, and then there's cows. And there's a range of efficiency. And if you're grazing the cattle, they become even less efficient. And dairy and eggs are amongst the most efficient forms of animal protein, but still you're losing, 60, 66 or 75% or more of the protein that you're feeding to the animal that's just incorporated, that gets used up in their metabolic processes. For farmed fish, it's 3 to 4 kilograms. Again, that's the best forms of farmed fish. And insects are also 3 to 4 kilograms. People say insects are ecological, but you have to feed them more protein to get a smaller amount back. And organic and grazing animals has even less efficiency. And how do we get animals to be this efficient in the first place? Those numbers I gave you are super efficient compared to wild animals. And we do a lot of genetic engineering. So we breed animals, and breeding is a form of genetic engineering, and we do direct gene modification. And then we use intensive conditions, confinement, antibiotics, and all these kind of things. And you can see the maximum size of chickens back in 1957 to 2005. And in fact, older breeds before 1957 were even less efficient and slower in growth than the current ones, okay? So despite all this, animal protein is less efficient. That means you have to use more land, more water, more soil, pesticides, antibiotics, fertilizers, and everything to feed these animals to get a smaller amount of protein and calories back to the humans who are going to eat them, okay? 50% of the world's crops are fed to animals, okay? Now, in terms of terrestrial livestock, there's 70 to 80 billion animals slaughtered per year. A billion is a hard number to imagine, but that's about 2,000 animals per second, mostly chickens. There's animals with one stomach, monogastrics, and then there's ruminants that can digest things differently. They can eat things that other animals cannot. Cattle, goats, buffalo, they're less efficient and they produce methane, okay? Now, as I mentioned, 75% of the Earth is, non-frozen surface of the Earth is taken by humans and livestock for agriculture. Is used by humans, 40 to 50% for agriculture, but 30 to 40%, closer to 40% of the Earth's non-frozen surface is actually used by animal agriculture itself. And despite using that much of the Earth's land, it only provides just under 40% of all the protein that is consumed by humans. And plant-based foods, which only use about 7% of the Earth's surface, plant-based foods for direct human consumption, provide more than 60% of the protein consumed by humans. And grazing, despite using a very large amount of land, produces about 1.2% of the world's protein, according to one study. Now, it may be a little bit different, but here's a good graph from Our World in Data that takes a certain data set and summarizes it. And you can see that it's just a small amount of all the land used. Crops, plant-based protein, give you the most amount of protein for humans. And that is legumes and soy and nuts and seeds and whole grains and all that stuff. But out of those crops for direct human consumption also is lettuce and apples and all kinds of stuff that has very minimal protein and doesn't really amount to much of our protein. So the actual protein grown on land is probably a much smaller area. So you can see how efficient plant-based protein is. And this is what's happening. We are destroying forests all over the world, including the Amazon, but other places too, and occupying forests that have been previously destroyed, and we're using them to raise animals. Okay. So the increased land use is ecosystem destruction, and grazing and growing crops to feed animals is the biggest world cause of deforestation, rainforest loss, wetland loss of grasslands, and ultimately biodiversity loss of ecosystems and species themselves. Far greater impact than eating plants directly, all right? And when it comes to factory farming versus grazing, factory farming is actually far more efficient than grazing. Now, there's other issues that are in there, okay? But that produces most of the animal protein that is consumed by humans and uses a lot less land than grazing, which can you require 2, 3, or 4 times as much land depending on the area of the earth and the grazing techniques. But grazing uses the most land and produces the least amount of protein that comes back to people, and is you don't see it, but it's a part of this colonial project where much of the land that's occupied on the earth for grazing animals, cattle, was taken away from indigenous peoples. You'll never see that talked about, but that's the fact. And currently, when you go to places like Brazil or the Amazon, where they are chopping down the rainforest for grazing and feed for animals, they are displacing and killing Aboriginal people there, just like they have done throughout the past centuries as part of colonialism. And so it's part of the system. When you're grazing these animals, you're going to change the ecosystem. Even if it's grassland, you're going to have these grazing animals change the ecosystem compared to native animals. And people will go actively annihilate all the animals that compete. So definitely they'll kill off predators, elk, and whatever animals are there that compete with their grazing animals, they will kill them off. And you're not going to see that in movies like Kiss the Ground and all that, but that's the big problem. And grazing animals causes worse methane emissions and other things. So there's all these people and all these movies that are coming out with slick advertisements for grazing and regenerative grazing, but unfortunately they're part of the meat marketing campaign and not scientific. And you can look at this article from Plant-Based Data where we talk about this, and there's some other good articles there too. In terms of water use, agriculture uses the most water, and because of the nature of animal agriculture, again, more water use per unit of food. Okay, but in addition to using more water, there's also the fertilizers and everything that we put on pasture and crops, the fecal matter from animals that cause eutrophication, bacteria and parasites that contaminate water sources and make other animals and humans sick, and so much that happens, and dead zones in the ocean where all of our runoff goes to the ocean, creating dead zones in the freshwater and the marine ecosystems. Now, this is caused by plant-based agriculture too, but again, you're more efficient, you're having less impact per unit of food when you consume plant-based foods. There's all kinds of numbers bantered about for climate change, but really right now, about a third of GHG gases, climate change gases, are caused by animal agriculture, to the best science that we have. And I'm not going to get into the data here, but there's something called carbon opportunity cost, as well as direct carbon emissions. So when we look at this data set from Our World in Data, now remember, Our World in Data is not always right or perfect in everything that they do. It just depends on the data set that they use to create their graphics. In this case, it's Poor and Nemechek, a very famous paper and a good data set from 2018. These guys rock, and the data set is expressed in these different graphs, showing the nuances about how different foods and their climate impact. But remember, we're not just looking at climate change impact when it comes to animal agriculture. The environmental movement is very focused on climate change, which is very important, but equally important, even more important perhaps, is land use change, change of ocean systems, and biodiversity loss itself. Okay, so aside from just climate change, we have to look at these other factors, and animal agriculture is a big offender in that. When it comes to fishing, you can see that from 1950 to these 2016, the estimates of fish that have been harvested from the oceans and now from what we call fish farms or aquaculture, and there's millions of tons of fish that are harvested, and when we look at the numbers, that's like 1 to 2 trillion fish per year. And again, trillion is hard to imagine, but just imagine, 30 to 60 thousand fish per second that are being harvested from the ocean. Okay, and of course the range is a little bit more than that, but I just expressed, but I'm just putting it more simplistically. And because of this, fishing is the most severe impact on ocean ecosystems out of everything. There's the combined insult of fishing and climate change and other factors too, and pollution into the oceans. But fishing itself is one of the biggest, or the biggest impact on the ocean. And when they talk about eco certifications for fish, the fishing industry runs the ecosystem certifications, and those certifications are basically kind of a marketing agency for fishing without having any scientific merit. There's all kinds of illegal, unreported, undocumented fishing, which means that the fishing impact is more than the statistics that we have. And the fishing nets that extend everywhere throughout the oceans are the number 1 causes of killing whales and all kinds of marine wildlife, which we call bycatch or bykill. There's shark finning and other types of aquaculture, different forms of fishing from the oceans. And there's this competition over the oceans. And now just the way we have greenwashing, and we have this whole thing about regenerative grazing that's trying to greenwash beef, take the worst food in terms of its environmental impact and just tell you stories about how it's the best, and having very, very no scientific merit in doing so. Now there's a lot of big blue washing movement too. And the interesting thing is that they're able to, these animal agriculture industries is sometimes able to get very good journals to support their claims, because people don't always know, even in the scientific community. In terms of fishing gear, 20% of ocean plastic is from fishing. And in some places about 50%, like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, one of the gyres. And these fishing gear present the most dangerous plastic that's in the ocean, because they continue to entangle and kill wildlife. These are just nets that are discarded by fishing industry because it's more expensive to bring them back on land. The easiest thing to do is just cut them and leave them in the ocean, go back and get new nets every time you need, your nets get a little bit old. And so the major organizations that track biodiversity on Earth, I had mentioned some WWF and Royal Society data before, but then there's also the IPBES. They all talk about animal agriculture's impact on global biodiversity. We have about 1 million species that are threatened out of about 11 million in total. And we're looking at the extinction of ecosystems, and agriculture is likely the biggest cause. Of course, there are multiple concerns. We talked about climate change, overpopulation, different forms of land use, the material economy, pollutants, roads, everything, right? But amongst these things, animal agriculture plays a massive role because of as I mentioned, we're using 40% of the Earth's surface for animal agriculture. When it comes to large animals on the Earth, there are 362 species of megafauna. 70% are at very, very fast decline and 59% risk of extinction. And hunting is one of the biggest causes, a combined problem of hunting and habitat loss. And again, animal agriculture is the biggest cause of habitat loss. And the two work together, because as we deforest for creating pasture or creating farms for growing animal feed, the roads, and also logging too, but these roads and this habitat loss concentrates the remaining animals, and then hunters get deeper and deeper access into wild areas. Okay. When it comes to food security, we want to feed a lot of people on the Earth sustainably. And if we just went plant-based overnight, there's good research to say that we could feed an additional 4 billion people with the existing cropland that we have. If we just converted the cropland that we use to feed animals, instead, we used it to feed humans directly, okay, with plant-based food. So we could grow a lot more food, actually on a lot less land. And a lot of our crops that go to feed animals essentially are, they go towards feeding the richer people in the Earth. And that means there's less quality food for the poor people in the Earth. We're diverting food, land, and water from the global poor to the global rich as we in this process of animal agriculture, because it's mainly the rich people that are getting most of the animal products. That includes the land grabbing and displacement and killing of indigenous people, as I mentioned. Biofuels present a very similar problem, though not as big. And and what we would like to do, our goal would be, if we could switch people to plant-based, or vegan is one of the plant-based options. I think all of the speakers are vegan here right now, and that we could grow all the food that we need on the Earth on a very much smaller parcel of land, and therefore allow nature to grow back in the remaining areas occupied by animal agriculture. And we would allow for rewilding. This is the single best thing that we can do for the environment. One of the single best things we can do for the environment. As such, I tell people to love their sources of plant protein. Love your pulses, your nuts, your seeds, your whole grains, okay? Canada Food Guide was mentioned by Kimberly. Here it is, and it's good. But even better is the Lancet Planetary Food Guide, created by the Lancet Project. And this is a multicultural, multi-country food guide that is very, very plant-based, and explicitly says that the animal protein is an optional thing that you can have there. But the majority of our proteins and whole foods should come from plant sources for the environment. And it also benefits food security by enabling us to feed 10 billion people by 2050 and minimize ecological damage at the same time and increase human health. There's good data about cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity, and a few other diseases that benefit from whole food plant-based diet. Okay, plant-based diet is fundamental to the reversing the ecological global crisis. But I still want people to remember that there's other things. There's food waste, and things like that, as in terms of, and biofuels in terms of farming issues. Now, we talk about whole grains, fruits, veggies, etc. And just keeping in mind that certain plant foods do have a tremendously high eco impact. When we take foods and refine them and we use a concentrated form of foods, it takes a lot of land and agriculture to make a small amount of product. So those foods have a disproportionately high eco impact. So oils are actually very heavy, take a very heavy toll on the environment. All oils do. Some more than others, like palm oil, let's say, but switching palm oil to other oils isn't going to solve the problem. Those other oils are also going to have a disproportionate impact. And there are things that, like, sometimes we transport foods by airplane, or foods that have no nutritional value yet have an environmental impact: sugars, refined carbohydrates, the packaging that we use, and sometimes good foods like avocados, because they're overconsumed and they come from certain parts of the earth that we're just decimating those those ecosystems to get avocados. And there's food and human rights issues that animal foods are some of the heaviest problem causers for human rights, but also plant foods, like most of our chocolate, bananas, and many other things, actually there's a lot of human rights abuse in the process. Remember that pandemics come from animal agriculture. COVID-19 comes from animal agriculture. You're breeding all these animals together, and it becomes a big pool of biomass where these animals are transmitting viruses amongst each other, generating new mutations, and eventually some of those mutations come and infect humans and cause a human pandemic. They also cause pandemics amongst animals. So you have these massive die-offs and illnesses spreading amongst farmed animals, and they're killing off these farmed animals. And also these viruses spread back to natural animals, to wild animals, and infect and harm and kill wild animals in the ecosystems, in natural ecosystems. So Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, SARS coronavirus of 2002, swine flu, HIV, Ebola, Spanish flu, and others, things like measles and smallpox, came from animal agriculture. There's a good talk that you can listen to, podcast that I have on plant-based data. And I think I've taken probably too much time. Just want to conclude that plant-based diet is definitely fundamental for global sustainability, on par with problems such as fossil fuels and the material economy. Remember, if you're a vegan advocate, that being plant-based does not offset or give us a free pass to then start consuming more of other things in terms of our vehicles or consumption or flights or having a big house or whatever it might be that we want to consume. It doesn't, being vegan doesn't mean you can consume these things, right? And I got a free pass to it. We still have to be aware of that. And we cannot look at this issue in isolation of other issues. We still want to look at, social justice, women's rights, population, environmental economics, governance, the global military industry, and all other forms of overconsumption. We want to look at plant-based diet in context of these other problems together. And I think James was alluding to that too. So here's one of our buddies that likes to put all these things together as well. And I think she's pretty good at being seeing the information from multiple directions and putting it all together in a very honest way. Check out plant-based data, okay? There's different things there. There's our databases of articles. They're fairly nerdy, but you can check out our summaries, and our videos are there too. That's a good place to start. And there's a little thing called resources there, which has great links to vegan starter kits, health guides, and stuff that you can use practically in your home, as well as some resources for physicians and healthcare providers there too, okay? So I'm gonna wrap up there. Sorry if I've taken too much time, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And yes, thank you. I hope that was informative.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Mehta. I've actually, since your last talk last year, I've referred to plant-based data a few times, and we used it for some of the club initiatives related to sustainability. And yeah, I highly recommend to everyone. It's kind of a good place where, all the facts are together. I feel like as vegans, we get a lot of questions from other people who are curious or skeptical and things like that. So it's definitely a really, really great resource.
I always tell people not to believe what I say ultimately, but go to the data itself and don't debate me. Debate the references that I'm using and take a good look at them and see if I'm using them properly, using them fairly, and making a fair argument for anything that I'm saying. So, but I think it's good to be very data driven and interpret the data in a proper way.
For sure. Okay, so that's all of our speakers for today. So we'll move into kind of the question period. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat, kind of whatever you're comfortable with. I can go first. I had a few questions. So my first question is for James. I was wondering, what are some challenges you faced in launching an all vegan fast food chain in an industry dominated by animal products?
Yeah, I don't know if yeah, it's interesting. So I mean, I guess the thing with animal products that it's kind of like people are used to eating those types of flavors and profiles. Like they're used to like a certain texture with meat, and they're used to like the fat content, and they're used to a certain types of flavor. So I think for us, like launching a fast food chain in that environment, we really try to match those flavors using plant-based ingredients, because it was an easy way to get people to try it, frankly. Because if someone's like, hey, like you have a vegan Big Mac, I wonder what that tastes like, people are more likely to give it a try than if I say, here's a kale salad or something, right? So because we've always been really focused on non-vegans, like which is maybe kind of weird, but our goal is to really to get people to eat plant-based. So once people are vegan or plant-based, then obviously, coming to our restaurant just provides a whole ton of great food options. But I think the key is like we've always focused on that non-vegan customer, and and I think that's been really successful for us. It's gotten thousands and thousands of people that would never have tried plant-based food to come in and try it. So because people can bring their parents or their friends, people that would normally not try plant-based food, because it generally has a bad stigma. People think of it as expensive, and they're not going to get full, and it's not going to be satisfying, and all those kind of things, which really work against people even trying it at all. So I think for us, we're like people's favorite restaurant to bring like their their parents or their non-vegan parents or whatever, because we've had so much success in them saying like, hey, I'll go anytime with you to that restaurant. I like it. It's well priced and it's delicious and that kind of stuff. So I think that's kind of how we've developed our concept, just that way.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for any of the speakers? I can keep going. I have a few questions. So the next question I have is for Dr. Wintemute, but I guess it kind of applies to all speakers as well. So if anyone wanted to kind of chime in afterwards, feel free. So I was wondering if you ever face disagreements with your colleagues in the medical profession about teaching veganism to people or kind of promoting it, I guess.
I wouldn't say that anyone has ever taken me on around an individual kind of doctor-patient encounter. And maybe that's because most doctor-patient encounters in family medicine occur behind closed doors, which is a little bit different than where Dr. Mehta practices, for example, in emergency medicine, which is like a little bit of a theater where all of your colleagues can kind of overhear what you're saying, usually because walls are often made of curtains in the emergency room. One of the barriers that I have encountered is and it's beyond kind of veganism, but including veganism is just messaging around sustainability. So I have wanted to create kind of a sustainability board, if you will, in our office where, we can give information around environmental sustainability to do with a variety of topics to our patients. And because people, at least pre-COVID, used to sit in a waiting room sometimes for long periods of time, which they don't anymore, or in the exam room, waiting for their doctor. So, those are opportunities for, people just kind of glance and read things. So I wanted to put, kind of good information. And one of my office mates, was really felt that this was my pet project, that this was not, kind of information that that all the doctors would necessarily want given to patients. And so, I have had some pushback there. Now, ironically, at the same time, and my practice is a teaching practice for U of T. We have 14 family medicine teaching sites at U of T, and now what's happening is at most of the sites, the hospitals are being mandated, just as kind of public sector kind of corporations are being mandated to have to track greenhouse gas emissions and report them, and also have plans to reduce them. So, for example, my hospital is being held accountable for their greenhouse gas emissions. And while this is still in its infancy, one of the things that's happening is that most of our teaching sites are actually, having, forming new sustainability committees, green committees, and having representation even from family medicine on those committees. So my site's a little bit behind on that in terms of the way that it filters down to the family medicine level. But I think that, I would like to think that within a couple of years, at least on this very slow timeline, my kind of chief of department would realize, for example, that this is not my pet project by any stretch, that what I'm proposing to do amounts to, scholarly activity and creative professional activity around promoting, important messaging around health.
Yeah, it's data driven, right? It's driven by data. I think that I take a lot of my advocacy around plant-based diet. A lot of my way of doing it comes from the field of medicine, because medicine is very data driven. We've been taught evidence-based medicine. We want to see data for any intervention that we do. If we do a test or if we give a medicine, what are we comparing it to? And what is the evidence, the scientific evidence that it shows benefit? And that's the approach that I take when it comes to looking at all the health aspects of plant-based diet. You can see the whole health section there, and the environmental and pandemics as well. What is the evidence that we have, and what are comparative options, and how do they measure up to each other when you look at them fairly and from different angles? So yeah, a lot of my approach to environmentalism itself comes from evidence-based medicine and our medical backgrounds. In terms of pushback, I think you can see there are environmental organizations, medical organizations, the industry itself. There's a lot of pushback that comes from all corners about plant-based diet. And we have increasing, every year, every month, I'm surprised at all the studies that come out that show that about the benefits to environment, or the problems with pandemics, or the benefits to health. It's incredible. If you go on plant-based data, there's a section at the bottom that says newly added articles. And you can click there and you can see every week or two the articles that we're adding to the database. It's fascinating, the volume of literature that's being produced, but very little of that trickles down to the public, right? But the collective evidence is quite amazing. So it's really important, I think, for environmental organizations and everybody else to start picking up on the data and looking at it in a rational fashion. And there's so many biases that are out there, even amongst the most scholarly people. They can be very biased anyways. And that is a challenge across the board in the field of medicine and everywhere else too. And animal agriculture is very, very slick. They have literally millions of dollars at their disposal every month or week for doing advertising all around, but then they also hire and pay scientists to conduct studies in ways that are beneficial to themselves. And we in the field of medicine, we know that if a drug company funds its own studies about its own drugs and everything like that, it's probably going to say that, hey, this drug is the best, but you need independent studies from that to really know if the pharmaceutical company is being fair. And it takes a lot of analysis, and there's a lot of oversight too, but a lot of things slip through. And with the environmental movement, there's very little of that oversight. And but even in the medical field, medical studies and environment, there's a lot of animal agriculture funding of their own studies and their own sort of pet scientists that they use to purport their messages, and you'll find them in those Kiss the Ground and all those type of other movies. So it's a lot of work to challenge that.
Yeah, I think we had a question from Veronica, so if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I had a question for Kimberly. I'm a health science student, and I'm also like looking to work in the healthcare field. And like I personally would love to be able to promote like veganism and plant-based diets like in my future career. So I was kind of wondering how you like came across, or like how you got into like promoting it in your practice, sort of.
Well, I mean, I got into promoting it because I became vegan, you know, and I became more knowledgeable, right? So it's not because I learned it in medical school, that's for sure, right? Because to Dr. Mehta's points, you know, this is not front and center information, even at the medical school level, right? So I can't, you know, there's a lot of things, you know, kind of areas of medicine where I've developed kind of knowledge or skill that may be kind of more in depth, you know, because of my own experiences, you know. So you know, even in other areas as well. Like I was trained you know, to deliver babies by midwives in Southern California, you know, not by you know, obstetricians in Toronto. And that really deeply has affected my approach to kind of labor and delivery and caring for my patients, and you know, developed kind of more skills around kind of helping people to breastfeed, for example. So I would have more skills than most family doctors because it was something that I felt deeply committed to. And this is just one of those areas. So, you know, and I'm lucky that it's not a fringe area when you look at the data, right? So, so you can speak confidently about plant-based diets when you're familiar with the data. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for you, Veronica. You know, in a variety of fields within the health sector to promote plant-based diets and to promote good health and sustainability.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Again, if you'd rather put it in the chat, you can do that as well. I actually had another question that kind of came up during Kimberly's talk. So you mentioned the change in the cannabis food guide from kind of industry funded to scientific based, which I was kind of surprised to hear because I know that industry plays a big role, kind of as we were talking about earlier. I was wondering if there's kind of any other examples of things moving from, you know, industry funding to more scientific based, or if it's still kind of a big issue where a lot of animal-based groups or, you know, health organizations in Canada have funding from different industries.
I think Dr. Mehta might be possibly better positioned to answer this one.
Yeah, there's animal agriculture. It's very interesting the way the world is set up in terms of animal agriculture or big ag. There are certain major industries that exert a lot of force and power. So the oil industry is the sort of primary example, but the smoking industry, the alcohol industry, the big pharmacy, plastics industry, automakers, you name it, the military industrial complex, you don't hear about it, but they exert a tremendous industry and influence on what goes on in the world. And in terms of foods, the meat industry is a very big, large, unified industry. compared to, let's say, plant foods, which is not, right? And so it's very interesting that the amount of power that they have. In terms of plant foods, I think salt and sugar and refined carbohydrate industries, which are also very powerful too. The marketing, the sort of junk foods and all kinds of stuff, they're super powerful as well. But other than that, so we have this food guide that is more science-based, but another government can come along and be more industry friendly and turn that around too. So it may come or go, right? We'll have to see. The nice thing is that plant-based movement is growing. And thanks to people like all of us and all of you and businesses like James, that's making a lot of progress. And eventually we're going to get to a point where even plant-based industries may make non-scientific claims too. So I think that's important for us to be aware of too, because even if we're in favor of plant-based industry, right, and if they start doing things, if people start doing things or making claims that are not scientific, it's important for us to, I think, give ourselves a reality check on that. We should hold everybody and ourselves to the same standards, and that's ultimately the way we're going to build the most credibility and get the best results, for the planet and people and animals in the long run. So I think that's good for us to be aware of too.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like it's kind of overwhelming. Like I know it's mentioned in a lot of documentaries about how big a role industry funding plays, and even a lot of like really major health organizations in Canada, and how they promote things like red meat because they're funded by some other group. And yeah, it's, I think, a big issue for sure.
Yeah, right now a big regenerative agriculture push is the latest marketing push by the meat industry. And you'll go to McDonald's and you'll go to A&W, our meat is 100% grass-fed and blah blah blah, and all these kinds of things. That actually means that it's not really better for the environment. Even if they are doing those things, it's not better, and it could be worse, right? And so there's a lot of push, but at the same time, we're all working hard too, and people like you are working very, very hard. So it's a big teamwork.
For sure. Okay, that's all the questions that I have today. I don't know if anyone else had any questions for any of the speakers. If you do, you can just go ahead and unmute yourself or put it in the chat.
I just wanted to congratulate James on, having a business that's kind of right, where the people are, I feel like, in family medicine, for example, I can only affect, kind of small numbers of people at a time, because each encounter is, it's just one person, just about one by one. So change, which is always typically kind of iterative, it's very slow in family medicine, but James is right out there and has created something that's kind of right out there where the public is and where people are making choices. And so thank you, James.
Thank you. That's really kind of you. Yeah, I mean, I guess you're kind of like right in that. Like I've always been trying to like affect change in a bigger way, because it's, I think everyone's contribution is important, because everyone can be reached in different ways, and sometimes some people need that one-on-one interaction, and other people just need to try like a burger that they really like that they can't believe is plant-based. So there's all these different techniques that I think are important, and this is also where the science and data come in too. So being a Western grad, I mean, my background's in bio and comp sci. So I definitely have always been like a really big proponent of like that education is such an important part of the complete picture, because, these are all kind of like gateways, right? Like you try a burger, you talk to your vegan doctor, you see some documentary that has all this great data that it is kind of like going to change your mind, and then all of a sudden you're vegan, and this is kind of like I think this is the winning formula that works, is that we need all these different like strategies and techniques, and everything is every technique is different, and a lot of the stuff that the animal save movement does, with what they do with documenting the abuse and use of animals, is like, those are important messages too. And not everyone wants to see that, but some people need to see it. So again, I think it's just a matter of like, as a community, we have to, all kind of work together. And I think by working together, we can reach everybody in time.
Kimberly, you should call me Tushar. You call me Doctor. I'm calling you Kimberly. But you also do stuff in the environmental space, right? And so do I. And when I compare the two spaces, the environmental movement and the plant-based or vegan or animal rights movement, I feel that the vegan environmental rights movement has so much more cohesive teamwork, so much more interconnection between whether it's a filmmaker, a chef, a scientist, or whatever it is. There's so much more integration between all those parts, and all those parts are really important. People need a doctor to go to that understands, plant-based, veganism, whatever. People need to have restaurants that they can go to and food producers. People need to have access to the science and films and so much more student things. And it's such a more smaller movement, but more integrated and well conducted. So I think that every part of the teamwork is important, and hopefully I'll be able to connect with James, and maybe Dr. Wintemute and I can present together at a family medicine conference sometime, and we'll have a bigger influence there.
Yeah, and I think it's like the real question is like, how do we make this stuff mainstream? Because I think like that's what has to happen to affect change. Like it can't stay as this like niche sort of like thing that 2% of the population's doing. We need like everyone to be aware of like the consequences of their actions, right? So everyone to understand, like if you're going to eat a regular burger that's made from animals, like there's a huge cost to that, to your body, to the environment, to animals. And I think the time is over. Well, it's not over, but it needs to end, where people are just in this sort of like fantasy world that they think that their actions have no consequences, right? So so this is where I think the real battle is, and this is why the education is an important component of it, and giving people these kind of experiences to change that mindset is where we need to really focus. And then hopefully people will just make the change, and then our world will be a way better place. So that's the goal, I think.
Vanessa?
Sorry, I have a question. So my question is to both Doctors Mehta and Wintemute. So as I'm a third-year health science student, and I'm also an aspiring physician, and I was wondering if you had any tips on how like we can intentionally build our own toolbox to one day be more like have a more integrative approach to healthcare. Because for example, Kimberly, you said that you had to go and learn from midwives, and I'm sure all this nutrition knowledge had to be stuff that you do on your own, because I've heard that medical school you don't learn any of this. So how, like, what would be any tips that you would give to a vegan medical student to make sure that when they are physicians, they can just have a more integrated approach and be able to promote sustainability and all this stuff?
Well, I would say, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, keep your heart open, find your champions. Certainly, there are, clearly university-based researchers in the field of nutrition and nutritional science. And medical students do get nutrition training in Canada anyway. Although it may be comparatively, kind of little compared to other areas, I mean, the field of medicine as a whole has just so massively expanded. We still have a 4-year medical school program, and there's just a lot to fit in. But I think that all medical students or medical residents will kind of pursue things that are meaningful to them. They'll find kind of champions and mentors, and to inform them. And so I think like most things in life, it kind of boils down to kind of relationships. So create those relationships, seek them out, and
reach out to us when you're in medical school. And I think if you have the intention of doing what you just mentioned, you'll find ways of doing it. And I think there's more opportunities now probably than when we went to medical school. So there's probably a lot of improvements and more resources that you can tap into for the things you're looking for. At the same time, it's still an overall conservative system. So you sometimes tread carefully a little bit and make sure you're backed up by data, and also, be selective when you're when you're applying those things, I think, as well. And you'll find ways over time where you can make that bigger part of your learning and eventually a bigger part of your practice in really, really good ways, you know? So it'll be an interesting learning process, which I'm sure you will do. And thanks for rescuing me for the computer thing.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for their questions, and of course the speakers for taking your time to talk to us today. A lot of interesting things learned and things to think about for sure. Go Western. So if there's no more questions, I put the link to the Google form in this Zoom chat. So if you're interested in winning a gift card to one of the local London vegan businesses, make sure you kind of have that link open and copied before I sign off here. But yeah, if there's no other questions, I'll let everyone get back to their weekends. And yeah, a big thank you to everyone for joining. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, that was awesome. It was good. Oh, okay.
Of course. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. I don't think we really touched on the whole vegan utopia, but
Yeah, that's fine.
it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll let you guys go. Bye.